Lucasfilm alters the Star Wars story deal. Pray they don't alter it any further. Sarah Connor is an apocalypse-ready badass, and in the words of the great Leonardo, it's time to go back. Collider Movie Talk starts right now. From the first...
say Cowabunga.
You know what? Everybody else would have said Cowabunga, Perri, and I was trying to go off the beaten path, so I took a little-known scene from the very first Ninja Turtles live-action film. We may have more Ninja Turtles movies, and we have our own Perri Nemiroff here joining us today. I know you're excited to talk about a lot of things in that universe, and we're going to get to all the Star Wars stuff that has been going on for the last 24 hours as well as the Welcome to Marwen trailer. Whole lot to get to today, and not the least of which is your live phone calls. That's right. It's a week later. We're in the good old studio, and we're going to attempt the phone calls. Perri, you and I had some phone calls last week, and we heard a lot of sound effects.
Just in case it doesn't go well, I'll be in the other room at that point of the show, and I'll just call in and give you a question.
Much like Sarah Connor, just have the apocalyptic bunker ready with some canned goods for me to retreat into. We kick off today with that Ninja Turtles story, and that is that the Ninja Turtles are going to be rebooted again by kind of the same team that rebooted them the last time. That would be Platinum Dunes, which Michael Bay is a producer of the two Ninja Turtles movies that were the most recent theatrical releases. And according to the new brass at Paramount, they want to reboot Turtles and have Platinum Dunes produce it, and that includes Michael Bay. So are we going to get new Ninja Turtles movies, a new storyline, a rebooted storyline? Is it going to be a continuation of the last two Ninja Turtles movies that had diminishing returns at the box office? So the first one did very well worldwide. Perri Nemiroff, I love the Ninja Turtles. You love the Ninja Turtles.
Do.
We want to see them do well on the big screen. Is this the right way to get the Turtles back in our good graces?
I mean, that's up for debate, especially because do we really even know if it's going to be a straightforward reboot? Or I saw a couple headlines out there that simply said third Ninja Turtles film. So for all we know, they could utilize the same technology and just bring this same version of the Ninja Turtles back to screen. I don't know what I would prefer, because even though I think that these two most recent Ninja Turtles movies, something wasn't right. They missed something. I did like the first one a lot more than I liked the second one, but there is no denying that the visual effects that actually created those turtles was shockingly good and detailed, and I think it would be a little bit of a waste to just throw that technology to the wayside.
I mean, I look at those Turtles movies that came out recently like golf, like when I play golf, because I'm not a good golfer. I don't play that much, but when I get out there in the course, there's a couple shots I'll hit every round when I'm like, that's what's going to keep me coming back. That's the hope. That's the promise. That's the potential. And I go back to that elevator scene in the first Ninja Turtles rebooted movie, and they're just being the Turtles. And there's no Michael Bay-isms. There's no stupid, ridiculous action. It's just them, and they're together, and that's what I want to see. I've just never heard of a reboot like this working, where it's the same people making it, and they're like, hey, remember when we tried before? We're going to try again, so just give us some leeway. Is there a scenario where we're going to buy into the same team just hitting the reset button?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of the Ninja Turtles movies. What is the equivalent to my 5-wood off the tee? That's my sweet spot on the golf course. And I think what you just said now hints at the sweet spot for the Ninja Turtle franchise, and it's the brotherhood. It's seeing them interact, and that has always been the highlight of really all the movies, but also especially these two movies and what worked best for me. I mean, really, the human characters, not so much. That's not really what I want, but that is my biggest concern with this announcement. As much as I'm very similar with Ninja Turtles as I am with Power Rangers, to the point that I don't care what came before it. If you're going to give me an opportunity to step back into these worlds with these characters, I'm going to take it no matter what. So I'm psyched to hear this news. But when you think of the fact that it's coming from the same people who did the last reboot, unless they find some sort of really unique voice as a writer and well, not really writer, we know the writer, but a really unique voice as a director, because even the writer, Bad Words, I mean, yeah, that was on the blacklist. That movie, I did like it. It didn't really wow me in any sense. And I don't know how because Andrew Dodge, the writer of Bad Words, the Jason Bateman comedy, has been hired to write this script. And I mean, Bad Words, you're not going to get away with what you got away with in Bad Words if you're talking about a Ninja Turtles family-centric kind of movie. Even though I think they tried that with a couple of jokes, a certain joke about a shell. I mean, I remember
I'd be up for it. And the original Turtles comics were darker than obviously what we got with the animated series. But going forward with with this. I think the Turtles are in a unique position, and I think it's a good one for them because I don't think that people take the Ninja Turtles lore and the mythology quite as seriously as you would something like a Batman or a Wonder Woman or, Iron Man or something in the MCU. So I think that the Turtles are easier to reboot every so often than it is with the MCU or something like that, or even something like Power Rangers. I just see more cash value, in rebooting the Turtles than I do the Power Rangers.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that, but I think that there are likely some out there who really hold the lore and the mythology near and dear, but when you're talking about bringing a big budget movie to screen, that's not just about the hardcore fans, people familiar with the brand. That's about a much wider audience. And I think in order to have this new movie make more than the last ones did, because the first one did pretty well, enough to justify that sequel. And then that second one, I forget what the exact amount is, but it was like in between 200 and 300 million worldwide, I think on the higher end of that range, but not enough to justify continuing if you're going to have a clean break from those movies and show to people who maybe didn't see those or didn't like those, this is a worthy property to come back to. I think you do need a completely different look and style, which again is unfortunate because I really did like the turtle design and I liked how the motion capture was utilized with that.
Yeah, Out of the Shadows did, which is the second Turtles movie in the rebooted franchise that Michael Bay produces at Paramount, less than half of what the first movie did opening, and it just going on from there. It didn't even gross $100 million domestically, which would kind of be the benchmark for a Ninja Turtles movie. Just looking at if you had to reboot a Ninja Turtles movie, there's only so many times you can tell any origin story. And that's kind of what I was getting at with Batman or Superman or somebody like that. Would we be accepting of seeing yet another Turtles origin story, or do we have to just accept that we know who the Ninja Turtles are? Let's just make a better movie.
I think there's a way to do it. I mean, that all comes down to script. If you could sell it well enough, you can get away with maybe even just hinting at why they are the way they are. But I don't know, especially when I start to think about newcomers. Like, it feels different to me than, let's say, when we were talking about Spider-Man Homecoming. We don't need Peter Parker's origin story, the stuff with Uncle Ben all over again. But in this case, when we're talking about walking, talking, crime-fighting turtles, you might need a little something to know why they exist. But no matter what route they go with the story, all I keep thinking is how much toy-to-film properties Paramount has right now. And even though they might not be in the same world entirely, Paramount does have the film rights to these guys right now. What if we do see in the future some sort of plan to integrate Ninja Turtles with G.I. Joe, with Transformers, with Power Rangers? You really never know. With cinematic universes, I feel like it's just limitless creative possibilities. And I'm not saying that they're good creative possibilities necessarily, but Paramount is in desperate need to have a major money-making cinematic universe. And Ninja Turtles is a hot property. And if you find a way to smush it all together, I think that's what they would do.
All right, the can of worms is officially open. You brought this up before we went to air, and I was thinking, wait, no, the Turtles, like when I was a kid, I know that some people have the Turtles and Power Rangers crossover, so if they had both those toys, they played with them together.
Yeah.
I was I kept the Turtles separate from everything else in the toy chest, but I do have to admit I'm a little intrigued by the idea of having Transformers and G.I. Joe and Mask and Rom the Space Guy and the Turtles and all these other properties being in there together. But the Turtles, I think that it just begs the question again. I am up for a Ninja Turtles reboot. I am up for an origin story. I'm up for all that stuff. But from the same people that just gave us those two movies, it's like I just maybe hold off on the Turtles. Maybe that's the best play, and maybe Star Wars or Ninja Turtles fans don't like hearing, hey, we need to wait between movies a little bit longer. If you wait between movies longer before you reboot them, they get more special.
Especially from the people who were just highlighting quotes about originality in the filmmaking business, yet they're rebooting something they've already rebooted before. But I don't know if it's even possible for Ninja Turtles to be paired with the Transformers, because Paramount, I think, has the film rights, but I think other rights, like toy rights and TV rights, they're kind of all over the place. Or maybe Nickelodeon has it. So I don't know. But one way or the other, Paramount is looking for major brands right now. Major brands to either turn into cinematic universes or to turn into franchises. And if they've got the rights to Ninja Turtles in the palm of their hand, whether or not those other two movies did well, they're gonna reboot it and they're gonna try again. I just wish it was with someone other than Platinum Dunes. Not to say Platinum Dunes can't make a great film. Loved Quiet Place, one of my favorite movies of the year. Put this property in somebody else's hands.
Yeah,
now.
Quiet Place came out and they're like, hey, we're making all original horror movies. But let's reboot Ninja Turtles again. So, look, I understand you have a property, have a franchise like that, you want to make sure that it can be your tentpole summer movies for years to come. I hope Ninja Turtles can do something because, man, I love seeing those turtles on the big screen. Your favorite Ninja Turtle is?
So my favorite Ninja Turtle to watch is Michelangelo. The one that I identify more with is Donatello.
Okay, good. Glad you didn't say the R word. Not a big fan. I'm a fan of the three Ninja Turtles, and their buddy Raph can do whatever the hell he wants. Leonardo, that's your leader. Our next story involves a new trailer that just dropped from the Robert Zemeckis movie starring Steve Carell. Welcome to Marwen. This is a crazy cool story about a man played by Steve Carell who undergoes a heavy dose of trauma, and in order to cope, and really as an artist, the only thing he's able to do is to go into his backyard and set up this giant, small replica town from World War II where there's good guys, there's bad guys, there's Nazis, there's females that come in and maybe they're bartenders, maybe they're waitstaff, or maybe they're able to protect the heroes that we're rooting for in this movie. It's a mixture of animation and live action. Welcome to Marwen. It looks like something that has such imagination in it, but yet I'm watching this trailer and I have to admit, as much as I might want to go see this movie, I don't know that there's a huge audience for it. So let's get to the audience later. Let's just get the Perri Nemiroff take on Welcome to Marwen.
It's funny going from Ninja Turtles to this because they seem like two completely different things, but you even brought up just that sensation of playing with action figures as a kid, and that is kind of what's happening here to a point where he's kind of reconciling all the trauma he's experienced with building these dioramas, taking photos, and also actually utilizing them in his everyday life to cope with what happened to him. Based on, I still haven't watched the documentary that this movie is based on, but I've watched the trailer a couple times and anything I can find online. Based on that, I didn't expect so much comedy in this, or there's obviously some very serious elements that are highlighted in this trailer, but it almost had a more lighthearted feel, and I imagine the ultimate tone is going to be a little bit of a bittersweet quality throughout most of it. But when I look at this trailer, what I wanted to see most of all is what they actually do with the figures and bringing them to life, and I believe they utilize motion capture in that as well, and there is definitely a little bit of the uncanny valley feel to it, which can be off-putting to some, but this is just so strikingly different from anything I've ever seen before, where, again, it goes back to the idea of playing with toys and how something like that, it might seem meaningless and trivial at a point, but it could really change your life and shape who you become and could be a big part in coping with whatever you're experiencing in your life, and that is something that's coming to screen here, and I think those visuals paired with that story could have a really explosively powerful movie in it.
Yeah, there's darkness in comedy. There's darkness in even the most family-friendly movies of all time have darkness in them. Look at the first 5 minutes of a movie like Up. Look at a lot of the classic Disney movies. There's sadness paired with the fun, lighthearted stuff, and I think that's what you're going to get with Welcome to Marwen. Like you said, the mix of animation, if I'm looking at this on paper, I say, okay, we have some animation in there, we have some cool stop motion, we're playing with toys a lot of the time, we have Steve Carell, we have Leslie Mann, we have a really good cast, Robert Zemeckis directing it, comes out around November. It has all the ingredients to be a giant hit. Do you think that this could resonate with audiences, or do you think it's just going to be a movie that comes and goes, maybe gets a lot of critical acclaim, but it just doesn't really get that family dollar, like something that's going to be more palatable and easy to digest from families, like something like Wreck-It Ralph too?
I don't know, because now that I'm thinking about it, initially when you started to pitch that question, I was going to say, if critics really like it and this thing maybe has Academy Award potential, stuff like that, people will gravitate towards it, whether or not they look at that trailer and they're like, that's a little too weird for me, I'm not into it. Then I started to think of some of Zemeckis' other films recently, like, Allied, for example. I thought that was really good, and he did The Walk, right? There's another one that I thought was really good and had awards potential, and I think that just kind of came and went at the box office. This might be a different case just because it is so strikingly different that I think if the studio behind it finds some really interesting ways to advertise this, it could strike a stronger connection than maybe those other two films that I just named.
Yeah, it is based on the documentary Marwen Call that was by Jeff Malberg. Malberg is the executive producer on the movie, and if you haven't seen the trailer yet, I really encourage you to check it out, and because I think it gives a good picture of what the movie is, which is what you want a trailer to do, which is sell an accurate portrayal of the movie. But it's something that I've never seen before. I know it's based on a documentary, but it feels like a wholly original movie and something that is going to stand out of the box office, hopefully, once we get to November. Well, before we say goodbye to Perri Nemiroff and welcome in Mark Yodi Reilly, I got to talk to you as well as everybody else at the office. We've just kind of been buzzing over the last 24 hours about this story that Lucasfilm has put the Star Wars stories on indefinite hiatus, which sounds like a nice way of saying, hey, we don't really want to make any more of these movies because we don't want to risk what happened with Solo. And my take on that is that if you're going to say we're not making any more Star Wars stories, I hope you're doing it for the right reason. And that reason should not be the box office failure of Solo. I think that reason should be the fact that audiences, we know these characters, we're fans of these characters, we love these characters like Obi-Wan and Boba Fett and Han Solo in the trilogy movies, and we want to see other Star Wars movies go to different parts of the galaxy in reference to time and reference to place. That, according to the report, is what Lucasfilm is going to be focused on. They're going to make episode 9, and then they're going to look to other places. Maybe it's the Benioff and Weiss series of movies, maybe it's the Rian Johnson trilogy, but it will not be Star Wars story movies like Obi-Wan or Boba Fett. Perri Nemiroff, is this the right direction for Star Wars to go in the future?
Well, personally, that's what I've been rooting for. I've been rooting for creative opportunities to explore this just vast galaxy where, for whatever reason, we seem to be focusing on the same familiar characters over and over again. And that's what I think didn't work more so than anything about Solo for me. I mean, I keep saying if it was about a different smuggler, a different character, and not tied to the Han Solo I know and love that was brought to screen by Harrison Ford, I think I might have found more to like about that movie. But when I think about how Solo did at the box office and looking at this as maybe a knee-jerk reaction to that, I don't think that's what's happening here, because no matter how you look at it, yeah, that comes into play when you make a decision like this for the landscape of the future of your film franchise. But we're also talking about, I mean, go all the way back to Force Awakens. Before Force Awakens even had hit theaters, you had a whole bunch of development, a whole bunch of pre-production, a whole bunch of production, then post-production, then release. And that is the same thing that happened with that movie, with Last Jedi, with Rogue One, and now with Solo. That is a significant amount of time that you have to look at how things are going, and then to take that experience, assess where you should be going in the future, and then move in a better direction. I mean, that's what they have to do. They have to build a solid foundation, figure out what works for them as filmmakers, for their brand, and then hopefully they're taking all that information now and they're going in the most promising direction.
And movies is not the only direction that they're going in. They also have this TV series, which is very ambitious, that Jon Favreau is going to be overseeing. And look, I'm a Star Wars fan. I was a Star Wars fan long before I ever got into this. And once everybody at Collider and these other places I work realized that any Cro-Magnon could do my job and they kicked me off to the curb, I'm still going to be a Star Wars fan. In the meantime, I said before, I didn't need a Han Solo movie. But I enjoyed the Han Solo movie and I got excited to go see it. I don't need a Boba Fett movie. I don't want an Obi-Wan movie. If those movies are playing across the street, I'm running to go see them, but I'd rather see something else. I think that this is Star Wars at least pumping the brakes and saying that, look, we're not necessarily just listening to the fans and being knee-jerk reactionary, but we do want to take into account everything and maybe peel back a little bit and realize that Star Wars, maybe it's not a Marvel where we have, 4 movies come out every year. Maybe it is something that we need to protect and keep that legacy intact and release episode 9 and then see where we're going from there, as opposed to just, and here's another Star Wars story and here's another Star Wars story.
I'm even hesitant to say that, though, because think back to the very beginning of the MCU, the first 3-4 films. Would you have said, oh, I need 2 to 3 Marvel movies every single year? You could sustain that, you could make a lot of money, and you can make great stories. I, for one, probably wouldn't have bet on that way back then. So that's what they're doing right now. They want to continue, whether it's film, whether it's TV. You build the foundation, you see what works, and you take it from there. That's what they're doing. And I think if I've learned anything from the responses to Last Jedi and my personal response to Solo as well. Take the damn handcuffs off. Have fun. You've got this crazy, just vast cinematic universe where you've got lightsabers and Jedi and the Force and wild space. Why aren't we going to any of these new places and meeting new people? I hope that that's what they're doing.
And it gives you more freedom as a filmmaker because you get to say, hey, you can do whatever you want. It's not like you're making a Han Solo movie and, well, Han Solo doesn't do that or Chewie doesn't do that. This is how Lando should be to play him with the character going in. You can do whatever the hell you want. So hopefully they do it. We're going to remind you guys that next weekend we're going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada. Don't go anywhere yet, Perri, because you have a huge panel you're going to be hosting, and this is something that is really an inner child kind of experience for Perri Nemiroff, hosting a Power Rangers panel. It's the 25th anniversary panel with Jason David Frank. That's at noon on Saturday, June 30th. How excited are you to host that?
This is weird. This is so weird because ever since I found out I was doing this, all I can think of is back in the day when the show first started, and I was allowed to watch anything I wanted as a kid, but a lot of my friends weren't. And I vividly remember sitting on the bus going to school and recounting the latest Power Rangers narrative to friends. And if you had told that age version of Perri, oh, one day you're going to be at a Comic-Con panel talking to Jason David Frank, I'd be like, shut up. You crazy. And now I'm just beyond excited for that.
I cannot wait to watch you host that panel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having
here
me.
Today. Let's flash that Las Vegas Comic-Con one more time. It's Amazing Comic-Con, Amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con. I'll get that right at some point. In fabulous Las Vegas. The Collider Heroes panel's first up on Friday evening, and then we have the Future of Collider. That is following Perri's Power Rangers panel, and then the Collider Movie Talk panel closing out the slate on Saturday, and then Sunday at 11 a.m. is a Collider.com panel where Perri's going to be on that. Frosty Weintraub from Collider.com is going to be on that. I'll be doing stand-up throughout the weekend at Harrah's in Las Vegas. You guys can get tickets soon at markelslive.com. We're talking about Star Wars, and you can't really have a Star Wars conversation around these parts without somebody named Mark Yodi Reilly getting involved in the discussion, so we welcome him to the show now. You hear this news about the Star Wars stories getting put on indefinite hiatus. I know that you were very excited about an Obi-Wan movie.
Yeah,
you wanted to see him adjust the rocks on his front lawn. You wanted to see him do crosswords. You wanted to see him get drunk and thrown out of Tashi Station. How disappointed are you today, or do you see silver linings in this move by Lucasfilm?
Well, you know, I talked with Fernandez yesterday on a special Jedi Council podcast, if you want to listen to our thoughts, and literally talked through the emotions that were going through me like a therapy session. Because at first I thought it was reactionary. I thought it was a little too like looking at Solo box office and being like, oh, we're going to, no, pause. But then it was like, it kind of makes sense that they just kind of pull back and they go, you know what? But for now, we're just going to focus on episode 9 and the new trilogy, whatever that may be. Personally, I think it might be Benioff and Weiss. That makes more sense to Perri's point, which I thought she made great points. New characters, new areas of the galaxy, perhaps, hopefully, we're looking at, you know, Old Republic kind of stuff. But when you talk about the Obi-Wan movie, there was a definite fandom that wanted that movie. More than anything, more than Solo, more than Boba Fett. That was the news that I was getting from at least my Twitter feed, and that's me too. I think that was a good story to look at for a Star Wars story kind of spinoff. I think if we get a good episode 9, I think they might hit play again and look at everything again with an Obi-Wan movie. I don't think it's dead. I think there's silver lining here. I think that the Star Wars franchise, once we get episode 9 coming out and it kills, and it will, it's the culmination of the final sequel trilogy. That thing's going to kill at the box office. And I think they'll look at it and go, okay, now maybe we can do that Obi-Wan movie because the fandom was so strong in their vocal wanting this. And then we'll see what happens.
I don't think it's a question of the episode 9 box office. I really don't, because The Last Jedi crushed at the box office.
Yes.
But it divided fans.
billion.
And when you look at episode 9, what the job that movie has is, I think Lucasfilm is doing the right thing right now. They're pulling in Obi-Wan on Tatooine, where they're just going deep undercover.
Right.
Let's not talk about a lot of things until we get to Star Wars Celebration. And then we can show a trailer, perhaps. And we can start to tease people about what episode 9 has. But other than that, let's stop announcing things. Let's stop having stuff get out. Let's just take take a breath. Let's get rid of these Star Wars story movies, and let's focus on original things that we could do after Episode 9, plus the TV show that's going to be on a streaming service 2019, 2020. This is the move that I think the Star Wars stories should have gone in if you look at the way that they were created in the first place, because you had the announcement of Rogue One, and you also had Josh Trank was about to be doing some movie.
Boba Fett, if all reports are true and accurate, he was going to do the Boba Fett movie, and then that got put on ice.
And Rogue One had, there were issues, let's say, with reshoots and with creative vision, all that thing. Every Star Wars story film has had some sort of creative difficulty, and I think a big reason why is because it's a very limited sandbox that a filmmaker is able to play. And when you're dealing with established lore, established characters, even Rogue One, which had new characters, that's a very built-in storyline that we have. It's got to start at point A, and we know that it ends at point B.
Right.
So there's not a lot of room for a storyteller to get that creative. Whereas if you have another corner of the galaxy, you can do whatever the hell you want and expand it. And that I would not line up to see a Boba Fett movie or a Obi-Wan movie or a Salacious Crumb movie. I'm just saying that I think the better play for Lucasfilm is to go somewhere else in the galaxy and maybe a different time period.
I totally agree, and I think that the theme of our conversation yesterday was vision, because the vision of doing a new sequel trilogy with old characters, handing off the baton to the new characters, Rey and Kylo Ren and Finn and Poe, I love. But when you talk about then revisiting old characters like a Boba Fett, a Han Solo, and even an Obi-Wan Kenobi, even though I want that, I think that contains you into a universe, and the universe shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And with Han Solo, I felt it was so reliant on nostalgia that it was a little boring for me, because I had already filled in the blanks for Han Solo, and that mysterious smuggler with a heart of gold, I had already filled in enough blanks that I loved him, and it was Harrison Ford, and I didn't need anything. I didn't need to see the Kessel Run. I didn't need to see all these things. And then the vision to almost kind of making a left turn so abruptly to include that end character and setting up something after that we learned in Rebels and the Clone Wars has now left us going, wait, now you're talking about the canon? Like, I'm a little confused. That vision is a little bit weird for me, and I really am starting to look at that. So if we go to different corners of the galaxy and we introduce that, I mean, it's a galaxy far, far away, and there are a lot of people in that galaxy and a lot of aliens and a lot of everything. I would love an Old Republic, because those are the stories we've only heard about, and maybe some people have played in the Knights of the Old Republic and some of the old books that we have for the legends. But you could dive in there and cherry pick some things like they've done in the new sequel trilogy and just start building. What did it look like to form the Jedi Order? Where was the first Sith? Who was the first Jedi that went, you know what? I don't like this. I think I'm going to go dark. And I'm going to grab this guy, and it's a rule of two. Those are some interesting stories that I think would be fantastic, because if you introduce a great character that that has zero ties to a Skywalker, and don't give me blood or anything, and go, oh, you know what? In the future, I see you being Skywalker. No, just start with...
Just a bunch of guys writing a book. Like, one day there's going to be a prophecy. There's going to be this boy, and he's going to build a droid and win a pod race.
Stay away from prophecies. Don't give me the, in 50,000 years after the Battle of Yavin, there's going to be a Skywalker.
I don't think they would be quite that on the nose, but
right.
I will admit, one of my favorite things about Rogue One was that they expanded the mythology in a way I didn't expect, because I was expecting this enclosed movie, and I think that Gareth Edwards and company did as good of a job as you could to hint at things that had come before on Jeddah, because you have these temples that are now ruins, and I want to see when those weren't ruins. I want to see that kind of stuff. Why has Lucasfilm been so reticent to dust off the Knights of the Old Republic or make a lot of that stuff that is Star Wars legend back into canon?
I don't know. I mean, everything seemed to be geared towards the nostalgia. That's the lack of vision that I see, is that when you kept announcing, all the rumors were about these old characters. And I know that officially Lucasfilm only announced a Benioff and Weiss and a Rian Johnson trilogy.
But according to these reports, the Obi-Wan movie was in active production.
Yes, and I think they were waiting to announce that. I think they were a little hesitant to announce that until they saw some solo box office. And THR broke the Mangold Boba Fett. It wasn't an official announcement. I think they were gearing up and having talks with him and going, you want to sign this? We're going to see what happens with Solo, and then we're going to pull the trigger on a Boba Fett movie. But when it didn't work, then they went, okay, wait. we're going to hit pause, like I said. Hopefully they didn't lose any money, because some of the reports of the Obi-Wan was it actually started pre-production. I don't buy those reports. I think the pre-production they had was a script. That's it. I think that's the only development money they spent on, and maybe they went over to Pinewood and went, okay, that's going to open up in January after they're done filming Bond 25, so I'll go ahead and book the space now. I think that's about as far as they've got. But I think you have to get rid of that nostalgia. I mean, sorry, guys, I know you might hate this, but The Last Jedi, there was a theme there, and it was kill the past and move forward. And that's what Disney needs to do. And that's what Lucasfilm needs to do, is not kill it, but lovingly look at it and learn from it, and then jump off, create new characters, because then you will get new fandom in. You'll get new characters that go, like right now, some people are like, my first Star Wars was Phantom Menace. My first Star Wars was Rebels. My first Star Wars was Clone Wars. For me, my first Star Wars was the original trilogy. That was my gateway drug. So if we have somebody go, years from now, my first Star Wars was the first movie in the Benioff and Weiss trilogy, then you're off and running, and this thing can keep going.
You heard it from Mark Reilly, and I co-sign that. The way for Star Wars to move forward is to forget the past and move into the future by going 10,000 years in the history of Star Wars. So
by going back in the history of Star Wars.
We're going into the future by going into the past, and it's all going to make sense somehow.
Very meta.
Thanks to the flux capacitor and 1.21 gigawatts. Well, Mark Reilly, I know you're disappointed that you're not going to get an Obi-Wan movie for the foreseeable future, but I didn't want to have you on the show and not give you at least some look at a desert plains area, apocalyptic badass warrior, and that's what I have for you with this first image from the new Terminator movie, Sarah Connor. That is Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor on the set of the new Terminator movie that is directed by Tim Miller, set for release in 2019. That is the Sarah Connor that I met. This is the Sarah Connor in the Terminator universe version of Jamie Lee Curtis from the new Halloween trailer, where you're just preparing for this thing. You don't know when it's coming, but you don't trust that it's never going to not happen again. This thing, whether it's the apocalypse or Michael Myers, it's not going to be locked up forever. It's going to go down, and when it goes down, you better be ready. Linda Hamilton looks ready.
She looks ready, and I gotta say, she looks amazing. That is the Sarah Connor I know and love. This seems like a logical continuation from T2 and her character. She looks ready. She's got the bulletproof vest. She's got these great locks of gray hair that she's owning it right now. And I like what you said. I think there is a similarity between the Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween sequel, so to speak, which is, sure, they put the Terminator in the molten lava at the end, and he did the thumbs up, and they went, okay, we're ignoring Salvation, we're ignoring Rise of the Machines, and whatever that other one was. But that doesn't mean she's not going to be ready, because she knows there's time travel involved. So I like that angle on it, and from all the reports, they want to hand off to a new generation and continue on the franchise. That's where it gets a little dicey for me. I don't know how much farther we can go in this Terminator kind of world when you know so much, but they have time travel to use.
We do have time travel at our disposal. I mean, we can do this like X-Men. We can do this like Bill and Ted.
We can do this every 5 years and just reboot this thing.
So many ways to travel through time, and I wouldn't be surprised if this Terminator 6 officially, but it actually, like Reilly said, is taking place right after Terminator 2, or at least it's a continuation of the events. It might not take place right after, but would not be shocked if the movie opened with just the road that we saw, at the end of that Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So very interesting prospect, and I know these are just the first looks at it. The movie comes out Thanksgiving of next year. I'm kind of getting really excited for the new Terminator movie.
I'm kind of excited too. I didn't think I wanted a new Terminator. After Jenny Smith, I was like, I can't. That movie just, I didn't hate it like a lot of people, but I did watch it scratching my head, being like, what are you doing? What are you doing? John Connor's a Terminator? Really? John Connor?
Rise of the Machines. I had an okay time until Claire Danes suddenly remembered she could fly a plane 2 hours into the movie, and then you had Genesis and all these other things. Well, speaking of the apocalypse, we're going to take your live calls again, and that's going to happen in just a second here. The number to call in is 323-522-5515. Go to Skype. call that number again, 323-522-5515. We love hearing from you guys. Talk about any of the stories we talked about today, whatever is on your mind. And we also want to remind you that later on today, we have an all-new episode of Jedi Council coming your way, and tomorrow a new Schmodown. And I'm going to be doing some stand-up at Comic-Con. We have Las Vegas Comic-Con coming up next week, and then San Diego Comic-Con, the big behemoth of Comic-Con. It's in downtown San Diego, and I just announced last week I'm going to be doing some stand-up down there. Here's a quick promo. Hey everyone, Mark Ellis here. I'm a comedian, and I'm thrilled to be once again doing stand-up at San Diego Comic-Con. This time it's at American Comedy Company, Friday night. We'll have somebody check that. Can we look up what the Friday night is? July 20th at 10 p.m. You can get tickets right now at my website. Use the promo code SCHMOES for a special discount. See, the show's at 10 p.m. because I figure you, the Comic-Con goer, can have time to go to the convention and enjoy all that stuff. And then you get time to shower because you're not just going to be seeing me, you're going to be seeing other people. Let's be honest, there's a lot of germs at Comic-Con. Sanitize yourself. Maybe even one might consider special guests. So there could be some other people that you might not expect to see. Here's how you get your tickets. Cue the Satriani. You might see some special guests. Hey, everybody, that is going to be me. You guys can get tickets at markellislive.com. Use the promo code SCHMOES for a special discount. And I am pleased to welcome somebody who may or may not be performing on said show. We're still working out the date. We're still in contract negotiations. This is what happens when you give somebody their big break, is that all of a sudden they think that they just are entitled to every show you do. That would be John the Outlaw Rocha. How you doing, bud?
Well, if you give me an inch, you know I'm going to take a mile. So, listen, we're working it out because the last time, it kind of wandered a little bit in the last couple of minutes, so I want to make sure I have a tight set to have the fans enjoy themselves and make it worth it to go on stage and introduce you or open for you. You apparently have 30 people opening for you, which is unfair.
There's a long but distinguished list of people who are going to be on that show, a lot of special guests, so stay tuned here for future info. And without further ado, we are going to again risk what can only be described as at least an improvement over last week's live callers, because last week there was a whole lot of sound effects and all these things going on. And now we think we have it ironed out. We actually have a phone number for people to call in. And this is what I would like to do every Thursday going forward, is kind of end the show with the live fans. We do Twitter Monday through Wednesday. We do some calls on Thursday. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to trepidatiously go into the control room now and see if we actually have a caller on the line. Is that the case?
We're getting the hold sign from Cody.
Getting the hold sign from Cody?
Is that the case? Something about stretching. This in the business in the industry.
Unless you're Mark Reilly, he thinks this means he thinks this means continue.
Yeah, this continue.
He doesn't really do the hand signs as well. We have a caller on the line. Hey, you are on Collider Movie Talk with Mark and John. Steven Rocha. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Hello, you're live. Trying it again. Hey, there you go. What's your name? Where are you calling from? You just got to believe in yourself. You just got to believe in yourself.
I think there's a pause. Is this one of these old long?
You got to take a breath.
One of these old.
You got to realize that you're on the show that many people dreamed of being on when they were kids, way back to when we were in the early '60s doing this.
What's he saying?
All right. I don't know. It was a good effort by the first phone call. I think that, that's how we do things on this show, is that we start out with a foundation of low expectations, and then we're going to try to build on it from there. So that was a good opening phone call.
Yeah.
Because much like the opening set in a comedy show, you're not expecting a whole lot from the first guy on stage.
No.
You just want to keep building from there. So they just closed the control booth window. We don't know what that means. In the meantime, while we are figuring out the calls, which we are going to be taking a little bit later on in the show, can I just get your quick, maybe log line, for lack of a better word, your movie poster grab, your feelings as to the continuation or lack thereof of the Star Wars story films?
Well, I think this makes sense at this point, at this juncture, with everything that happened with Solo and, of course, Last Jedi. And I hope I'm not repeating what anyone else has already said, but for me, this to me feels like the beginning of movement towards change, right? Towards the change in the administration, change in the people up top. So to me, that's what I think is happening. Is they're going to do this to see how this goes out, they want to focus on just the anthology film, or I'm sorry, on the trilogy films, and then finish out episode 9. And then maybe through this whole time now, they're going to figure out what their next step is going to be. Because I think they underestimated the reaction to Last Jedi, and then the way the box office crashed and burned to a degree for Solo, I think they realize now, oh, this is real. This backlash is real. People are willingly not coming to see Solo. Because I don't think Solo is a bad film in any way, shape, or form. But I think people willingly didn't go, and that is always danger for you when you have a franchise that is dependent on breaking box office records and making billions of dollars and having a track record of making a lot of money.
Yeah, and that's a problem, especially for people like us who are Star Wars fans. Who look,
Absolutely.
we're going to line up to see whatever they make.
Yeah.
We may not be the most excited about it, but we're not only going to go see it, we're going to talk about it on shows like this, and we're going to say, hey, did you see the new Solo trailer? Yeah. Again, it's not the movie I would have made, but I saw the trailer and I'm like, I'm excited about this. So it's an odd place to be where you say, hey, I don't really want a Boba Fett movie or an Obi-Wan movie, but if they made it, I would be pre-buying tickets and I would go see it with all my friends. So the direction that Star Wars should go, I think, is in a new uncharted realm. Is that where you like it after episode? I mean, obviously focus on episode 9,
right.
and closing out this new trilogy and then you move on to where?
Yeah, I think you move on to. I've always felt the Knights of the Old Republic is just so much to explore. There's other storylines. I think you walk away from the Skywalker storyline completely, all of it, and I think in some ways, signs from the universe. If you're looking at this thing, the way it's gone down, they killed off Han Solo in Force Awakens. They killed off Luke in Last Jedi. Unfortunately, Carrie Fisher passed away. These are signs that are telling you, like, we're moving away from the old trilogy and let's move on to something new, something different, something better. That had nothing to do. And I think the fan base has gone, okay, you brought the old characters back. We don't like the way you brought them back because you never gave them a scene, all three of them together. And even when you gave us Luke and Leia, Luke was an apparition. He wasn't actually really there physically with Leia. So those kinds of things matter, and you do. And so when you do that, when that happens, that affects the fan base in a I don't know, a visceral way, and so they don't want to necessarily come back. And now that it's done, I think they'll come back once you move completely away from the Skywalker storyline. You bring in some fresh, interesting voices to take a look at Star Wars, and then you trust them to do what they're going to do and make it work. I think that's the thing that has been the undercurrent of this entire reboot, for lack of a better term, of this version of Star Wars, is the fact that the directors have come in and they've been either other directors have come in to take over, or people have come in at the last minute. They've had re-edits, reshoots, that completely changes the tone of the movie. Those kinds of things. Some directors have been signed and then fired before they're started. So there's all kinds of stuff that feels like unrest.
Yeah, well, and I understand unrest from both Star Wars fans and from people who think, hey, they're not going to take live calls today. Will we take live calls before another Star Wars story gets released? We're about to find out right now. Hey, you are officially on Collider Movie Talk with Mark and John. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Gail, and I'm calling from Portland,
we're so
Oregon.
close. What's your name? Where are you calling from? One more time.
Oh, sorry. My name's Gail, and I'm calling from Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
Hello, Gail, calling from Portland, Oregon. Is this Gail who may be a big Schmodown fan by any chance?
It would be. I've been to both live events, and I've already got my ticket for the third one.
Oh.
It's going to be a big day in September. Well, hey, Gail, thanks for calling today. What is your question for us?
My question is, what actors that have never been in a movie together would you like to see in a film, and what genre of film would you like to see them in?
Ooh.
Okay, so you can take any two actors or actresses, you can put them into a movie, and the rule is they cannot have worked together before. Okay. I'm sorry, Blue Valentine fans. We cannot put Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams into another. I just saw that movie's going to be on Netflix in July, and I'm already getting the box of tissues. I love that movie and how much it upsets me. So an actor, and it can be two actors, two actresses, whatever. What kind of genre are you thinking?
Tom Hardy.
Okay.
And Russell Crowe.
I like that.
As brothers in an action adventure film, kind of like Lawless was a little bit like an action adventure film where you could do a Western with them kind of redoing the Sons of Katie Elder, where they go back to the town after their mom's been killed, and then they have to figure out what happened there and who the corrupt cattle baron was. Something like that would be fun, I think.
Okay, I am taking Nicolas Cage and Michael Keaton.
Oh.
I'm putting them in a movie together, and they're both going to be versions of either the Batman Birdman or Kick-Ass or any other crazy character, Big Daddy that Nicolas Cage has been. And I want to see them be just like broken, demented superheroes that are in a movie together, and they're going up against the crime villain in that town who happens to be played by none other than Eddie Murphy. That's the movie I want to see. I don't think Eddie Murphy, Michael Keaton have been in a movie. I don't think Eddie Murphy, Nicolas Cage, I don't think any of them have been in a movie together. That is the film that I am currently making.
I like that.
Which movie are you guys going to go see? Call us right now and let us know here at Collider. Waiting for another caller to come in. Are we good on the line? All right. Was that a thumbs down or a thumbs up? That's our control booth over there. So things going a little smoother today. Good question from Gail. Good opening number. We're going to stay on the air for another 15 or 20 minutes. Bob Gray has a question from Twitter, and he's talking about The Nun, because The Nun apparently was originally supposed to come out in July,
right?
Which is kind of a holiday for the Conjuring movies, because that's the first Conjuring movie came out during the summertime, and then they saw the success of the movie It, and they're like, oh, well, that came out in September, building towards Halloween. What do you like better as a release date for a tentpole-ish horror movie?
I think it's always better to go in the summer. I
Really?
do. Yeah, I do, because you're kind of playing to the crowd by dropping it in the fall, by being like, oh yeah, we're going to put it in Halloween, because Halloween lasts for one day, and people get excited for a couple weeks beforehand, but then afterwards it fizzles out. So you don't have that same vibe coming through because people start focusing on Christmas. And so to me, July
They don't start focusing on Christmas in September.
Are you out of your mind?
I might be.
Yeah, I mean, like, people start as soon as the leaves start falling. Nowadays, not when we were growing up, but nowadays, Christmas music starts coming on in September. In August, people start putting up decorations and stuff.
I know what you're doing right now. This is a criticism of me, because when I go running in the fall, I listen to Christmas music because it will pump you up. So the Feed the World song, God, that song just gets me when I'm running. So I will listen to that as early as September. But I think September, October, great landing place. Yeah. I think September, great landing place for The Nun, because The Nun does not want to go up against Michael Myers, which is coming out in October.
Right, you don't want to do
Nun,
that.
I think September, I think that movie is going to do very big business, at least opening weekend, because, again, it's a monster, and it's also the Catholic religion scariness that is all coming together. You get The Exorcist, you get Freddy Krueger, all in one package that's wearing a habit. Very scary stuff. Sister Act, you'll never watch that Whoopi Goldberg classic the same way. I believe we have another caller on the line. Hey, caller, you're on Movie Talk with Mark and John. What is your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Haroon from California.
Good to be with you, Haroon. What's your question for us here today?
Yeah, I was just, I was wondering, do you think that with all the hype for Aquaman leading up to Comic-Con and all that, do you think there's a possibility that this movie could be like the biggest hit of the DC universe?
Do you think Aquaman could be the biggest hit of the DC universe? I saw some news this morning that I guess there's the first official trailer for Shazam is going to drop at Comic-Con.
Oh.
And I think they're probably going to do the same thing with Aquaman, because they know that Marvel's not bringing a big presence there, and the MCU is not going to be doing a big panel. So DC can own that weekend, maybe the summer of anticipation leading into the fall. Aquaman comes out around Christmas time. Can it be the biggest DC hit?
Yes. I think it absolutely can. I said this before on Movie Talk, I think earlier this week, or like,
you said it last week.
Last week,
on this day when we were being invaded by Finding Nemo sound effects.
I just felt like this film is the one that it has an incredible amount of potential if James Wan can create a very spectacular underwater world that we can absolutely enjoy and explore for the first time in the Aquaman universe. Jason Momoa, I really loved him as Aquaman in the Justice League movie. I like what he's doing with this. I think they're in great hands with James Wan, and the pictures themselves that have come out already get me super excited. So to me, yes, I think it has a very strong possibility because it checks off a lot of boxes. You have strong female characters. You have a good-looking, muscle-bound lead that a lot of people have been commenting about how attractive he is. All of that works, and then you have these incredible visuals that you've seen in the photos and the images that show you that James Wan and the people involved on the special effects side and the technical side are taking their time to create a very nuanced, interesting, and spectacular-looking world. And so, to me, if the story works, people will come. And DC fans want something that everyone else loves as much as they loved Wonder Woman. So this could be another possibility, and people come in droves, I think, to see. And plus, it's Christmas, so people will come multiple times with their families.
Look, I'm glad you're a Monkeys fan. You're a believer.
I am a believer.
I don't think that this movie can do the business that Wonder Woman did. I just don't, because Wonder Woman, over $400 million domestically. I mean, it opened at over $100 million. The biggest opening in the DCU is $166 million from Batman v Superman. I don't think Aquaman's going to get anywhere near that. It's not a commentary on the movie or what James Wan or Jason Momoa or any of the cast can do, what the trailers can do. I'm very excited to see Aquaman, and I think that with the right promotional campaign, this movie could crush. I just think getting to those heights, it doesn't feel realistic for a movie about Aquaman versus Wonder Woman. Plus the movie you said opens around Christmas, so you have competition from families with Mary Poppins Return, stuff like that. You have the Bumblebee movie that's going to be coming out in the fall. So there's a lot of movies that are going to be giving it a run for its money.
I feel like Bumblebee will have fizzled out by then in terms of the amount of its box office power.
Yeah.
But Christopher Robin is possible. The Mary Poppins stuff is possible. But I think people, the comic book superhero movies, once they're the ones that have been good this year, they've overperformed to the box office. So to me, Aquaman is certainly possible. If we see a trailer coming out of Comic-Con and it is gangbusters, I guarantee you the early box office tracking will absolutely change and increase, maybe possibly twofold. I think 200 million is a possibility.
If we see Atlanteans riding great white sharks, and it looks good.
People lose their minds.
You got my money.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I want Aquaman to crush all the rides. I'm excited to see Aquaman. And I'm also excited to take our next call. I think we got one. Is that the case? Hey, caller, you are on with Mark and John on Collider Movie Talk. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, fellas, this is Mike Lovins from Columbus, Ohio.
Mike Lovins, the hard-rocking, hard-living Mike Lovins. Seen him at shows at Columbus Funny Bone. He's a big hard rock fan and a big movie guy as well. So, Mike, what is your question for us here today, bud?
All right. Well, I know we share a love for good music, so I wanted to see. Two of my favorite movie soundtracks, ironically, are both from animated movies. But the animated Transformers movie and the heavy metal soundtrack. Are two of my favorites. I was wondering what soundtracks you guys like.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, as far as the animated movies go, I think Megamind's got a pretty good soundtrack. It gets some Highway to Hell, some Welcome to the Jungle in there, and the Minions movie. I say Minions. Other people say Minions. The Minions movie with Scarlet Overkill, Sandra Bullock voicing the character. There's some good music in there. Then at the end, one of them busts out a guitar and actually plays Eruption for a little bit. So as far as animated movies go, those would be my soundtracks. I'm going to give it open to you for live action, animated, whatever you want to take. I hope Heavy Metal's in your top 10.
Heavy Metal Midnight. Is Van Halen on that soundtrack?
On Heavy Metal?
Yeah.
No, but Sammy Hagar sings the title track.
He does. Yeah. He does. A soundtrack. I would say Top Gun soundtrack's fantastic. The Pulp Fiction soundtrack is great. The Crow soundtrack is still one I still own and still go back and listen to.
Good grungy 90s.
And the best of it is on that soundtrack.
Well, I would say
all the grungy sounding. Don't give me singles for
let's say that I have some impressionable nieces and nephews, which I do, okay? Sure. And let's say I want to show them what the 90s was all about. Do I give them the Crow soundtrack or do I give them the soundtrack to the movie Singles?
Well, how young are these kids?
They're like 3.
3. Well, I don't know why you played them grunge music, any kind of grunge music.
Because I have old records that I'm going to re-gift to kids who aren't going to be any the wiser. So that's what you're getting until you're actually old enough to complain about gifts, at which point I will put more effort into it. But the movie Singles, which is it was kind of like a comedy. Reality Bites, good soundtrack. If you're looking for 90s stuff.
Yeah, agreed. Even the Melrose Place soundtrack, Letters to Cleo, a lot of stuff.
Oh, God. Every time I put you on camera, you just got to start talking about Melrose Place. Tune in for Models Inc. Talk with John Rocha right after the class of 96. Was that a show?
Yes, it was.
All right. I think we have another live caller. Hey, caller, you are on with Mark and John, Collider Movie Talk. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Jonathan Peck. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia. Currently, right now, I'm on vacation in Nemiroff.
He's in where?
Well, he's on vacation. He's on vacation.
On the beach. Nice.
The beach, but from Virginia. So that's awesome. Well, you got two Virginia boys on the show. What's your question, bud? Might have lost him.
It's surrounding the Star Wars question, and Rocha just mentioned before about the past directors. And let me ask you a hypothetical question, though, that's surrounding those past directors. Do you think, looking back in hindsight, though, do you think would it be fine with it if they, let's say, kind of been fired or just finished on where they're going, or looking at the films in the same way when we first announced they're getting hired, they're doing those films, or the way they direct actors, or looking at past films in general in hindsight.
Yeah,
it's a hypothetical sense of it.
It's a fair question because, I mean, you look at, obviously hindsight's 2020 and nobody's better at Monday morning quarterbacking than people doing what we do. But I think that if Lucasfilm could go back, I don't think that they would give the directors free reign or different reign as far as I think they might choose their directors. Obviously, they would say, well, maybe we don't take Josh Trank at this point in his career. Maybe we don't go with Lord and Miller with the vision that they have. But is it just as simple as, hey, we should have gotten different directors or we should have guided the actors a little differently? Or is this just something that the Star Wars stories were just doomed to not fail, but not live up to the expectations of the episodic films?
Well, see, I don't subscribe to that theory at all. Like, I think Rogue One is a fantastic film and maybe the best one of the new ones that have come out, and that's a Star Wars story film. I think the Solo one you can take or leave if whatever your opinion on that is, but I think what you're talking about is, should they have kept Josh Trank? Should they have kept Trevorrow? These are good questions, but the thing is, for me, I think they jumped the gun. I think they announced too early with these directors. I think they got hyped up. Like, this is not a director's market necessarily, where unless you're talking Spielberg or you're talking these really, really big directors, announcing someone like Trank or Trevorrow doesn't really push the needle that strongly. And I think that's what, to me, especially because people coming out of Trank's earlier movies, they liked them, but they weren't like going overboard crazy about them. The Lord Miller thing is a different situation. I really do believe they should have let Lord Miller finish this thing out and see what would have happened. Because look, would it have been any worse than what we're getting now? I don't know. Would the reaction have been any worse? And then the movement there with Gareth Edwards and with Rogue One, like, I would love to have seen his cut, to see the darker Rogue One. Even though the one we got is good, I would have liked to have seen the even darker cut to see what they were going for with Jyn Erso. So there's a lot here to unpack on, because we don't know the nuances of why certain decisions were made at certain times. Obviously, with Trank, it seemed obvious that he was difficult to work with, whatever they said. But the thing is, you bring in these young directors and you kind of ruin them and their reputation by kicking them off and saying things like that, and that makes it harder for them to bounce back and find another job in this business. Trevor obviously got taken care of, but there's always these weird possibilities. Difficult possibilities walking into big franchises, and dangerous possibilities rather, and what can happen to you.
It's a little bit like the NBA draft, which is later on tonight, where there's so much potential because you just don't know that much about kids coming out of high school or kids that played 3 games, that played 50 minutes in college, and all of a sudden now they're going to the big leagues. Star Wars or Marvel or DC or these huge blockbuster movies, those are the big leagues, and I applaud the fact that any of these huge companies would take a shot on a young filmmaker who has some independent movies under their belt. They're good storytellers, but you just don't know how it's going to all end up and whether it's going to work with the fans at all. But I go back to my previous point. I appreciate the call. Maybe a director swap, or maybe the way they work with actors, actresses. I just think that when you look at it in retrospect, we had the announcement of Star Wars is coming back, and maybe we weren't ready for Star Wars movies that weren't episodic films like the way that they came out. Rogue One, you look at it now, that's the anomaly, and then you have Solo, a Star Wars story coming out and saying, let's just pump the brakes on the Star Wars stories for now, and let's go to a different corner of the universe after episode 9 and see how that plays out. Well, I think that this episode played out at least cleaner than it did last week. We are on our way. I think it's good enough to do live calls again next Thursday. Thank you to all of our callers, as well as everybody participating in the chat room on Twitter. And thank you guys for tuning into the Movie Talk podcast. The Movie Talk podcast feed, you can catch Movie Talk. You can catch the weekend show's Mailbag Afterthoughts with Ryan and Jay. Love to hear what they have to say about today's episode. And tomorrow, in this time slot on Collider Video, you can catch Movie Review Talk, hosted by the one, the only Mr. Movie Release Dates himself, Scott Mantz. John Rocha, thank you for joining us for the phone calls today. Where can all the kids find you? What's your phone number?
Oh, yeah, you guys can also find me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram. And stay tuned tomorrow for a new episode of the Cinephiles and Collider Body Slam podcast coming out later on today. We're recording it this afternoon with special guest Chris Burns from the Store Horseman podcast.
All right. Chris Burns, John Rocha on that show. I am merely Mark Ellis. You can follow me at Mark Ellis Live. I'll be at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles this weekend. Will John Rocha be opening for me? Probably not. See you guys next week. Hey everybody, Mark Ellis here. Thanks for watching this episode of Collider Movie Talk. You want to watch more? Then click up here, or you can click right here for more great content from Collider. And if you haven't subscribed to Collider Video, do so right now and share this vid with your friends. Thanks for watching.